If you're a couple and you're in your 60s with $300,000 to $350,000, you might be wondering, can we really retire? And with the right strategy, yes, retirement may be possible for you. And in this video, I'm going to show you what your retirement plan and retirement savings should look like using a 3-bucket approach so that you don't run the risk of running out of money. And maybe just as important, so that you can sleep well at night knowing that you can retire. So here we're going to dive in and meet Jack and Linda. Jack and Linda today are 65 years old, and they are actually retired today. Jack and Linda have no income. They have Social Security in retirement. That's it. They have no pension, no passive income, and no part-time work. Jack's Social Security benefit at full retirement age, which for him is the age of 67, is $2,000. And Linda, which again, her full retirement age is also the age of 67, is $1,500 for a combined Social Security benefit amount of $3,500. They have no active savings. Savings here are contributions into either an employer-sponsored plan, taxable account, some sort of investment account. They are no longer doing that because they are in retirement. Pre-retirement, they had expenses of $4,500 per month. They would like to carry that same pre-retirement expense spending into retirement. So here we see $4,500 in retirement, and we can see here that this is their retirement age. Going into their net worth, they have a total net worth exclusive of their primary residence. It's also important to note that they have no debt of $365,000. $350,000 of which is in their investments. Jack has an IRA with $200,000 in it. Linda has an IRA with $100,000 in it. And they have a joint taxable account, a joint brokerage account with $50,000. Now, the one thing I want to highlight here is, there are other goals that we might want to include here. But for the sake of Jack and Linda, we're just simply looking at, hey, what is the bare minimum that you guys need to retire with $350,000 and our Social Security benefit, assuming that you have expenses of $4,500 per month. It is important to note that as it relates to goals, we can add education goals if you have kids. Do we pay for their college? We can add buying a new car, vacations, weddings, property investments, asset purchases, gifts, legacy plans, or virtually anything else that you can think of. Do you need a new deck? What does it look like if you have to replace your water heater? All of that can be added in here as goals. So for them, we're just going to leave it as is. We're going to go into their retirement analysis. And right away, we can see that Jack and Linda have a 97% probability of success. In fact, they have a median ending portfolio balance of $583,000. They're sitting in a pretty good spot. Now, there's a couple things that I want to immediately highlight relative to this video, and that is their investments and the fact that, if we recall, they're retiring at the age of 65. Their full retirement age for the sake of Social Security is not until the age of 67. So what do we do for those 2 years? Well, first, let's look at their investments. I like to break their investments, or how they're invested, sort of into 3 different buckets. I'm not saying that this is the way that they're invested today. There would be some changes that need to be made. But just thinking about this, when thinking about their investments, it's important to focus on, yes, asset location. Where are these investments held? Are they in an IRA, tax-deferred account? Are they in a Roth IRA, a tax-free account? Or are they in a taxable account? Well, the one thing I want to note here is, yes, location matters, but obviously allocation also matters. So the way that we're invested is as so. We have bucket number 1. Bucket number 1 is for income and liquidity that we need in 0 to 3 years. This is supposed to be income that's going to fill that gap between our Social Security benefit that we get in our monthly expenses. If we recall, we have monthly expenses that amount to $4,500 per month, but our Social Security benefit is $3,500 per month combined. So we run a $1,000 per month deficit. Where is this money coming from? Well, it's coming from our portfolio. So we like to have an income bucket. Again, that's 0 to 3 years of income that we need. And that might be invested in things like high yield savings or short-term CDs or T-bills, cash and cash equivalents. The idea here is capital preservation with low volatility. This money is not here to grow. Rather, this money is here for when you need it. This brings us to bucket number 2. Bucket number 2 is for 4 to 10 years. We call this our defensive bucket. The idea here is to replenish bucket number 1 over time as we pull money from bucket number 1. Now, the thing to keep in mind with bucket number 2 is that we're invested conservatively with a moderate or conservative to moderate allocation. Think of 50-50 mix or thereabouts of bonds and stocks. That is dividend paying stocks. Now, the idea here is to have some stability, but also moderate growth. Again, we don't need this for 4 to 10 years. This bucket is designed to grow moderately while keeping up with inflation and keeping volatility in mind. So now let's go into bucket number 3. Bucket number 3 is our growth bucket. Ideally, we don't need this for 10 plus years. Now, this is long-term growth to extend our retirement sustainability. This growth bucket, obviously, if you retire earlier, maybe you should have some more allocated into this growth bucket. But this growth bucket is there to have long-term growth, to outpace inflation, and again, extend that portfolio longevity. So for this, we're going to think, largely stocks for this 10 plus year growth time horizon. And the idea here is as we, rebalance our portfolio or realize gains, maybe we're moving some of that into bucket number 2, replenishing bucket number 2, so that we keep bucket number 2 replenished as it replenishes bucket number 1. So yes, investments are important, allocation is important, and location is important. But guys, so is rebalancing and so is your withdrawal rate. So I want to go into that. But before I do, I just want to look at this current allocation. You can see here that, again, across all of these accounts, we have that 56% equity, 44% fixed income for a hypothetical annual rate of return of 7.9%. Now we can break it down. How is each account invested? Well, as we can see here, a taxable account is 35% equity, 65% fixed income, with a 15% cash position. Guys, if we need 0 to 3 years in cash and we're running a $1,000 per month deficit, that's $12,000 a year, we need upwards of $30,000, $36,000 in cash or cash equivalents. So this is where we can start looking at this, again, just hypothetically speaking, and we can kind of figure out, okay, how do we need to rebalance this portfolio to align with that bucket strategy? And we can do that across our joint investment account, across our IRAs, to get a better idea and a better sense of not only, again, where is our money in investments located, but how should we be invested? The target allocation is cool because we can say, hey, we just want a preservation kind of target allocation. Well, if we go back into our joint investment account here, we can see the hypothetical changes that need to be made. In this situation, yeah, we can see, hey, we need to reduce some of this U.S. equity, international equity, emerging market exposure and go into more bond and cash-like investments. So now I really want to get into the cash flows in retirement. And I'm going to do this before we look at the withdrawal rate here, just to show you guys visually, specifically the 2 years between retirement and our Social Security benefit kicking in, what that looks like. So we can see here that we're 65 today, we're retired, we aren't collecting our benefit until 2027 at the age of 67. Well, we can see for these 2 years, we're going to have $54,000 and $55,000 in expenses plus a tax payment, meaning we're going to have negative net flows each year in excess of $54,000. Well, guys, this money needs to come from our portfolio. Again, that's how we're going to cover these 2 years here. So this money will come from our portfolio, again, using that withdrawal sequence of taxable, tax-deferred, tax-free. Now we can see at the age of 67, Social Security kicks in for both Jack and Linda. And now we can see here that they still run a deficit, but that deficit isn't as bad. Now, at the age of 75, when they're required to take RMDs, planned distributions, out of their IRAs, we can see here that now they actually have spend from unsafe cash flows. What is that? They have an additional $1,400 per year coming in, $2,400 per year coming in, $3,300 per year coming in. So guys, when we think about goals and we think about goal planning, it's important to look at our cash flows to get a better understanding of when we can spend money and maybe when we should hold back and be a little bit more conservative. We can see here at the age of 75, they're going to have a surplus in spend from unsafe cash flows. So that means that maybe if they have some of those goals and they're still young enough between the age of 75 and 80 to go and do some of those things, maybe we can look into that. Maybe we can add that into the plan. Now, if you don't want to wait until 75 to 80, I get that. Maybe you want to retire, you're young, you have your health, you want to go do things. Great. Put that into the plan. Customize that to you. Maybe that means reducing some expenses early on or pulling from your portfolio a little bit more. I don't know. That's going to be unique to you and your situation. That said, you can plan this out using this exact same tool by using the link in the description. Create your free retirement plan. So now let's go into our retirement analysis and let's look at our withdrawal rate relative to what we just looked at for our cash flows. The withdrawal rate, we can see here that obviously for the 2 years, 65 and 66, where we're relying on our portfolio to fund kind of those 2 years of retirement, we're going to have a really high withdrawal rate. And maybe we look at, hey, what does some part-time work look like? Or, what does it look like if, we have the option of working maybe another year? And that's something that we're interested in. How does that impact our plan? But for now, we can see that this is obviously a super high withdrawal rate. A risk that you run here is, what if we retire? The market immediately goes into just a couple negative years and we're pulling out, 13.8 and 15.9%. But then what we can see is through the lion's share of retirement, we have a sub 5% withdrawal rate. That's pretty healthy. And then later on in retirement, that withdrawal rate goes up slightly. Why? Because we're drawing down some of our portfolio through retirement. And so therefore our withdrawals are now making up a larger percentage of our total portfolio balance. But guys, the main thing I wanted to hit home here is, can you retire with $350,000 as your only source of, income and assets outside of your Social Security benefit? And while this should be very custom to you and your situation, we can see here that for Jack and Linda, yeah, it's possible. If they live a simple life and keep up this $4,500 per month expense, things look pretty good. And that brings me into another thing that I wanted to highlight here. I wanted to go over what retirement spending looks like. We know that retirement spending probably isn't just a stagnant $4,500 forever, especially if we were able to spend that pre-retirement. Rather, usually what happens with our retirement spending is early on in retirement, we have our health. Maybe we're traveling more, eating more, seeing the grandkids, going out to dinner more, and just doing more things. And then we hit a period of retirement where we just don't do much, our slow-go years. And then at the end of retirement, maybe we're losing our health and expenses tend to go up. So let's mirror that using the retirement spending smile. As we can see, this actually increases our median ending assets from $583,000 to $634,000 with 100% probability of success. Now, I want you to look at something here. We have $629,000 in ending assets, assuming we live to the age of 90. There's probably some things in here, some adjustments that we can make to maybe live, a little bit more in retirement. But again, I want you to be strategic. I want you to be strategic from a withdrawal strategy perspective. I don't want you to run the risk of running out of money before the end of your plan. Really, what we're hitting home here is, do you need $1 million to retire? I don't know. Maybe your neighbor does. Maybe your friend does need $1 million. But this is truly unique to you in your situation. For Jack and Linda, retiring at the age of 65 with $350,000, assuming these variables and goals, is reasonably something they could probably do. Now, the idea here is, if you're in a similar situation, I don't want you to fear the uncertainty. Rather, start creating your plan. Create a realistic plan around what you have going on today and see if this makes sense for you. Thank you so much. We'll see you there.